Okay, so everyone, so my name is Eric Nunez. I am a client partner here at Savanta. Here we have Christian and Philip Weissman. So I will go ahead and hand it over to them. But before I do that, I will make a poll available to all of you, and basically just give us an idea of why you find yourself here. Maybe that'll give us the opportunity to answer questions a little bit better as well, and make them a little bit more geared towards what your goal is for the call. And we'd much appreciate that. And if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat as well, and we can go ahead and get started. I'll pass it over to Christian now.
Yeah, thanks, Eric, and also welcome from my side. Before we start into the topic of how integration works from migration to operation, let's quickly also allow us to introduce ourselves. So as I'm speaking already, my name is Christian Heinrich. I'm the Chief Solutions Officer at Savanta, therefore in that role responsible for solution management, product development, the whole portfolio topics, and looking forward to present our integration approach today. And with that, handing over to Philip for some quick introduction.
Yes, thank you, Christian. Hello, everyone. My name is Philip Weissman. Also working for Savanta as the integration squad lead, hearing about several integration initiatives on the BTP. And of course, a big topic today is the PIPO migration. And for that, in particular for that, we would like to show you our approach and show you where we are coming from. And with that, I would hand back to Christian.
Thanks, Philip. So we introduced ourselves and allow me to quickly also say some words about Savanta. So who are we? Why are we talking about integration? So we are, you see it, a traditional, not so traditional, but an SAP partner, SAP Gold partner, and with a clear focus, namely clear focus on the topic of BTP and AI. And within BTP, of course, integration plays a big role. We will see that. We'll talk a lot about PIPO, but especially about Integration Suite as part of the BTP today. So we focus on the topic now since 10 years. We are in the market now for 16 years. We are a recognized partner in that space. We've been selected as the partner of the year in last year for BTP. Therefore, fully committed on everything on BTP, on the whole clean core structure, the end-to-end topic there, from the extension to analytics, BDC, AI, integration, you name it. But today, the official topic is integration. So therefore, let's directly jump into that one. So main topic is, and the big question is, why are we sitting virtually together here? And I would assume, I don't have the results of the survey yet, but I would assume a lot is also related to the end of life of PIPO. So this is the big driver at the moment for a lot of scenarios we are talking to about with our customers. This is a big trigger for people actually considering some change in their integration strategy and integration landscape in the first place, because you know it, there's the end of life, official end of life in 2027, where the old and the maintenance for PIPO is no longer extended. And therefore, we need to find something new. And if we look into the portfolio, and this is also the official position of SAP, if we look into the portfolio of SAP, the clear new topic to go to if you want to migrate from PIPO to some other SAP tooling is the integration suite. So of course, it's first of all something SAP kind of forces everybody to do. But I would say at the same time, and this is the other side of the medal, it's also a big chance. So it's not only somebody forcing you to do something, but it's also a great chance, because if we look into some of the reports, and I choose the Gartner Magic Quadrant as one of the examples, the SAP Integration Suite is actually a really strong player in that market. So that means finally we are not only in a must-do situation, but we also have a real chance to improve the integration landscape by moving away from PIPO and moving into the SAP Integration Suite on BTP. But if we look into that, this kind of creates an interesting situation. So like a classical trade-off. So usually if we think, and you might all know that from your S4HANA and RISE discussion. So usually if we think about a migration topic, we would rather go into a situation where we say, let's focus on business continuity. Let's focus on making sure we migrate everything from A to B with ideally minimum effort, because this is basically what was the trigger. The trigger was not necessarily, there might be different situations, but the trigger might not be necessarily, okay, I want to improve something. It's basically, I have to do something. So let's use the minimal effort, migrate from A to B, and that's good. But at the same time, we saw that the Integration Suite actually is a really good tool and a really good platform. So we should also consider the innovation potential that actually lies within the new platform. And I think this is, like I said at the beginning, always this trade-off between, okay, where do I focus on? Do I focus on getting everything running again, making sure that my business continues to run smoothly? Or do I use the chance to actually also build in some innovation? So finally, that's the situation I would assume a lot of you are in today as well. And well, you might have guessed it, but our clear message is that we strongly believe that it's not an either or. It's not a lift and shift versus an innovation, but we really believe that if you do it the right way, then it becomes a migration with built-in modernization. And what does it mean? Really making sure that you're balancing the efforts, and we see how we can do that, making sure that we reuse what we can reuse, that we just migrate what can be migrated, but that we at the same time really make sure that we have a look into modern integration patterns, into modern integration technology and topics, and that if we now anyway have to touch the different topics, that we are actually making the most out of it and build the innovation within. But how can we do that? So migration with built-in modernization playbook and key enablers, and Philip will show in a demo afterwards how this really looks in detail. But basically, it's three different pillars that we really believe in. The first pillar within the playbook is the clear integration strategy. So if you look into the current landscape, there is multiple PIPO instances, most likely. There's really a big amount of integration scenarios. There is a lot of integration owners, a lot of product owners, a lot of people relying on those integrations, a lot of external partners, and so on and so forth. So what we said is we need to start every program with a clear integration strategy topic. So what does that mean? It's really defining the cross-instance foundation and governance topics. And I just picked three out of them because Philip can show a lot more details than in the actual tooling. But it's really about defining the target architecture. So what should the future integration landscape look like? And at that point, it's already important because we can here already define, okay, how innovative and how modern can it look like? Or should it be limited to the most basic stuff? So topics like edge integration cells, like advanced event mesh, like API management, should we consider that from the first place? Or is it something that we can stop and park for later? Second topic is clearly governance. So really who decides what are the standards, what are the guidelines, quality gates. We will see that this is a really guided approach, that we have a lot of best practices there already and a lot of recommendations. But at that point in time, we need to align on who's responsible for everything, who are the owners, how can we approach them, how can we get their input, and so on and so forth. So second really important topic. And one thing I kind of picked out of this governance is, because we are a big believer in there, is the whole topic of decision trees. So how do we decide what goes where? So we will see that there is a lot of patterns that we can use out of the box. Event triggered, API triggered, classical flows, all kind of different topics, standard content we can use, but we need to find a way how we actually decide for the relevant and for the perfectly fitting topic. And this is something we define here all together in the first place. The second step is really a per PIPO instance migration program. Why did we decide for that topic? So you see here already we have one integration strategy topic, and then we have one clear container, one clear project for each PIPO instance. It's because we can do a lot of automations on that step. And really, and this is part of the topic where then the other side, so I talked about how can we integrate innovation, but this is where the other side, how can we integrate or make sure that we deliver it in the most efficient way. This is where we have a lot of automations available. So we can look per PIPO migration instance, the automated assessment. So what do we really have? What objects? What is the status of those different integration scenarios? How often are they used? Are they currently at a stage where they are ready to migrate or where we need to do something? So there's a lot of automation here ongoing. Same is with duplicate detection. So what we have within our tooling is based on an PIPO export, a clear duplicate detection, saying, okay, what don't we have to migrate? What can we cluster together? What has enough similarities that we have to consider to build it in an easier fashion in the new implementation. So this is something we have in there, and this is why we also did it in this dedicated PIPO migration program. And also topics like automated wave planning, so which migration scenarios belong to which waves, so that we really have a clear transparency here as well. And then the third one is actually the per integration scenario migration, because finally I named, what did I say? It could easily be 1,000 integration scenarios for such a PIPO migration program, easily more. So finally, we still have to look, okay, how can we realize those different integrations? So what we do actually is really for every integration scenario, a modernization check, really making sure, okay, is this a candidate for a modernization, or is this something that we just purely lift and shift and bring to the new platform? Per integration scenario, really a clear blueprint, reusable target designs, reusable patterns, reusable best practices to make sure that we bring it, we decide for the right pattern at that place and bring it over. And then a lot of automations here as well for testing, test automations, automated documentations, all that kind of stuff. Finally, to speed up the actual migration and then allow us to also look into modernization at the same time. So it's one integration strategy, multiple migration programs, and then really a lot of individual integration scenarios, but we have to do it in order to keep the balance here. The question is, how can we make sure that we can handle it? And this is where our integration factory comes in. So if we think about just the big numbers of integration scenarios we have and we need to consider, we need a clear way to structure it, to make it predictable, and to have a working model. And this is the integration factory. It's basically our platform to handle this end-to-end overall innovation process. You will see in a second that we have it for a couple of scenarios, but specifically also for integration, where we say, okay, really like in a factory, we have the clear requirements coming in, we have the design for the requirement, we have the engineering, so how should we resolve it? We have the AI-enabled production in here. We have a lot of patterns, parts, best practices that we can reuse for those topics, and then a clear plan how to ship it. And all the time a clear monitoring on top. But Philip will show in a second how this really looks in detail. So talking today about integration, but we have built on top of this innovation factory, we have actually 4 different factories ready to use. We will dive into that one here, saying, okay, how does this help to follow our best practice structure and to keep the transparency? But we are, on top of that, have the Clean Core Factory, just to give you a complete picture, for really making sure that we have a clear execution layer for our clean core topics. We have an extension factory for actually building AI, building extensions on top of SAP, leveraging also AI on agent-based coding. And we have an AI factory to make sure that we, turn AI initiatives into actual productive AI scenarios, just to give you a complete picture. So clean core, extension, and AI factory, but today completely focusing on the integration factory topic. And then really looking into what the integration factory actually looks like. So I already mentioned it really supports the full end-to-end life cycle of an integration, from the first requirement engineering, what does it mean, how could we solve it, finding the right patterns, and then actually realizing it. And how do we do that? It's basically based on 4 different modules within the Innovation Factory. It all starts with the demand management. Structure the demand. Every integration scenario is actually one demand we have in here. So it could, like I said earlier, easily be 1,000, but we have to structure them. We have to bring them into the right order. We have to map them to the right technologies. We need to cluster them also to figure out, okay, which topics should be handled in a similar fashion. How can we make use of this scaling topics, and so on and so forth. We have the second module, which is the project workbench. So this is really all about accelerating delivery, having the right integration patterns in place, supporting them with a clear step-by-step approach and a step-by-step guidance, but also with a lot of automations to make sure that we build them really in this factory mode, like really, really fast. We have the solution repository, which actually acts then as the hub for all running integrations, where we have everything documented, a clear overview of which integrations are there, who's responsible for which integration, why did we decide for which pattern, and those kind of topics. But we will also see that in a second. And a big topic for the strategy and governance module, where we have our best practices available, where we enhance them with our customers' best practices, to make sure that we have this central point of saying, okay, how should integration happen? How can we operationalize the governance, and how can we make sure that we make use of integration and build integrations in the same and established fashion. But I would say enough theory here, and it's a lot clearer if we see it in action. And with that, I would like to hand over to Philip for some more details.
Yes, thank you very much. So I will take over the screen. Right. Okay, so this is our tool, the Integration Factory, which Christian mentioned. We are starting basically here with the service catalog, where you can find all our templates for integration projects. So it can be single scenarios, or address single scenarios, like a case, an EDI case, like implementing one B2B integration, building an integration scenario, integrated basically into the pipeline concept, which is the natural successor of the pipeline approach in PIPO. Or it can be, for example, also be an event-driven architecture or an API proxy. Here you can also filter on the different portfolio areas. I will do this for integration. And then you find the service offering addressing only integration. And here you can also find or service templates addressing the umbrella parts, so to say. So the integration strategy, in this case, which is our first entry point, more or less, which Christian mentioned, but then also, for example, the PIPO migration program. And based on those templates, you can define, or you can create projects, or really one instance of a service template, which then can act as a project where you can track your progress, also edit a template according to your needs, and so on. And with that, I would now jump, when you look on the left-hand side, from the service offerings basically to the project catalog. And you see here, I, for example, created already an instance of the integration strategy project, where you then can find all the activities which we see in an integration strategy project, like an umbrella over the whole integration journey on the BTP. And very important for us is, I mentioned now some activities, is setting up a BTP integration COE at the very beginning of the integration journey on the BTPs, like setting up a knowledge base, so collecting all your learnings, but setting it up at the very beginning. And of course, this will develop over time. Create already now documentation templates for single scenarios, define process how requirements for single scenarios should be collected, and so on. And for your developers, set up learning paths to really onboard them quickly. And the COE topic we really see at a very important step at the beginning of the BTP integration journey. And then it really starts with creating concepts for addressing several kind of topics, role concepts, testing strategies. For example, do you want to use an external tool for it, or any other approach? Releasing is a big topic, addressing different integration patterns like jobs, but then also pushed integration scenarios or event-triggered scenarios. Several topics addressed here, and transport management guidelines, which tool to use, an external tool or the cloud transport management service on the BTP. And then it goes further via architecture topics, monitoring. And then if you are coming from a PIPO migration, or if you are in a PIPO migration, then really also define which PI instance or which PIPO instance to migrate first, and which is the second one. Or if you have just one instance, then of course jump into that single instance and see how to migrate this one. But here several scenarios from 1 to n PIPO instances are addressed. And then in the end, of course, all those guidelines, all those concepts must be aligned and handed over. And using this strategy project as an umbrella over the whole integration initiative on the BTP, we have, for example, a PI migration for the migration of a single PI instance in this case. And here we did the same. We collected all the activities to perform such a migration, like starting with the assessment document from the SAP, because we say this is a good starting point, a good inventory basically. And what you can do here, you can, for example, already upload the assessment document, and then the assessment document, which looks, for example, like this. I have it here. This is a dummy example, of course, a demo example with not that many scenarios, but you can see here, this you can get from SAP when you connect your PIPO to Integration Suite and use the migration assessment capability. Then you get such a report with a short estimation, a size, and so on. This is calculated by SAP based on the content in PIPO. And when you upload it here, which I already did, then in the background, all those information from the assessment are collected and persisted. And then based on this collection, you can also do an analyze assessment document. And here you can really address the topic which Christian mentioned, the trade-off between doing only lift and shift and modernize everything. And if you say, okay, you want to do both, but you want to modernize, but you also want to be fast, so something in the middle, then you can put a slider in the middle. If you say you really have a focus on modernization, like updating protocols from RFC to OData, changing the pattern maybe to an event-driven architecture, then you can put a slider on the very right-hand side. And if you say, I want to migrate as fast as possible, I just want to do lift and shift, then put it on the left-hand side. And when you click on create demands, then this is, I would just show a short preview. Then for each scenario in the assessment document, one demand is created. Now we are here in the demand phase, and then you see here for all the demands, for all scenarios, one demand is created, where you then can analyze further for each single scenario. And the activities in the demands depend, of course, on the on the content of the instance in the assessment, but then of course also on the value of the slider you put here. So if you are more on the right hand side, then the activities are really focused on modernizing everything, and on the left hand side focused on doing lift and shift. And jumping back to the activities of the PIPO migration. Then we basically continue with the clustering of the scenarios. So, for example, building migration waves, because if you have several hundred scenarios, you don't want to migrate them all at once, but you also don't want to release every scenario as a single scenario. You want to, maybe if you have 100 scenarios, you want to maybe release them in batches of 20 or whatever. So how it fits. And here we also have an AI in the background, which gives you a proposal for that, which you can do. So clicking this button will, at the moment, basically create a PDF giving a first proposal for such a wave planning. Like in this case, starting with a low complexity, only the ready to migrate scenarios, then going for higher complexity, and then in the end, high complexity with business critical systems connected here. We are also getting some advices like usage of the pipeline concept and so on. And this proposal you can then use as a guideline for your wave planning, which we're doing then in the next activity, basically plan the waves. And the planning the waves is basically taking this proposal and building the batches which should be released together. And before we do this, we also have the duplicate detection, which Christian mentioned, really diving deep into the PIPO scenarios and checking, okay, are there any scenarios which are similar? If yes, can we merge them together such that we have maybe not 2 or 3 scenarios which are very similar in the end, but instead having one scenario in the integration suite, which then maybe can be individualized or even can be used for all use cases basically in the end, which are similar. And then second part, the engineering phase, is basically taking the guidelines which we defined in the strategy project and implementing them, designing them, and then really jumping into the implementation itself, starting with setting up the integrations with tenants, setting up the testing tool if one is there, and then jumping into the migration waves, which we defined here at the very beginning. And jumping into the migration waves really means, okay, now jumping into the single scenarios, starting in the demand phase, which were created before by analyzing the assessment document. And here you see the thing which I mentioned. We have now the scenarios as a demand, and attached we have already the activities which depend then on the value of the slider which you have chosen. And here, this is an evaluation needed scenario. So evaluation needed is a category from the assessment document. This means it can't be migrated automatically. So you have really to check, to analyze which features are missing, for example, in Integration Suite, what has to be changed, but then also in the end, identify modernization potential. So like doing a problem analysis, then find a solution, an alternative approach to implement it, and then identify modernization potential. And also here, the idea is basically collecting your notes, collecting documentation, and so on, do a scoping already in the demand phase. And if you did this, if you did all the activities, then you can get a proposal for such a service template, which we had at the very beginning. So if I click this, we get as a suggestion. So of course, we didn't collect any material here, so maybe it's not a correct suggestion, but one proposal, and then you can say, okay, yeah, makes sense. Then I will go back and start a project based on this proposal and select the template which we have just seen, and selecting the event triggered iFlow in this case. So like an iFlow using the AMQP sender adapter and in combination with event mesh. And from there, you can basically start your project. And same here, I already did this for one example. And then you see here, based on the template of an event-triggered integration flow, you can see the activities dedicated for implementing such an use case, like checking the business accelerator up if there are standard events which can be used, drafting the iFlow, then doing all the event mesh configuration, depending if we set up the advanced event mesh or the normal event mesh, which was defined in the strategy part, creating the queues and or topics, define custom events if they are not available, and so on, like developing just the iFlow, and then end to end, not only the implementation, also transporting it to a test stage, test it, create a test case in a testing tool if you have one, and then going into productive mode with also then handover and also support in case of any issues. And yeah, that's basically the end of a single scenario. So as a summary, we really started with this strategy project at the very beginning as an umbrella over a whole integration initiative. Then, as Christian mentioned, the second layer was a PIPO migration program, where we had not an umbrella over the whole integration on the BTP, but an umbrella over the PIPO migration project. And then we are jumping into the single scenarios to implement them, to really migrate them from PIPO to the integration suite, based on the modernization value we have chosen. And then, of course, also focusing on several capabilities on the integration suite, starting with B2B to iFlows, to event-driven architectures, and so on. And with that, I would shortly jump back to the slides. We did a demo here, again, a short summary again over our layers, basically. So really starting with the strategy does not really has the need of a PIPO migration program. So an integration strategy can also be built when you really start from scratch. And start building your integration suite tenant and start building integration scenarios on the integration suite. And then via the PIPO migration, we go through demand management for all the scenarios, and then really turning the scenarios into projects. And through implementing the projects, through the realization, we really come into an operational mode where we deploy scenarios in production and enhance them. Of course, if there are some issues, we fix the issues, and so on. And then a few features mentioned here below. For example, we have the duplicate detection, which we mentioned. We have the wave planning, the template proposals we have seen, and so on. And then some, I would say, really standard features which you should use when you set up the integration suite. For example, the transport management, the cloud transport management service on the BTP is one example. And we have seen all the templates, or several of our templates. Of course, when we work together with a customer, then and we see there is a certain structure or a certain pattern of integration scenarios, then of course it's also worth it to implement new templates or develop new templates based on the customer. And then in the backbone, we have all the knowledge on the general setup topics, on the role concepts. Also developer hub, for example, when we think about API management and so on. And to the very end, I would also show you two use cases. First one is together with Agravis Raiffeisen. They did a PIPO migration with several hundred scenarios. They didn't have a very detailed knowledge on the BTP, on the integration suite. So the challenge was really to transfer the knowledge such that they are also able to implement integration flows and develop APIs and so on the integration suite. And they had really rough timeline. They wanted to migrate everything in 1 year, and the focus here actually was on a lift and shift approach. So here the focus was really with as less business disruption as possible, keep the timeline and migrate all the scenarios onto integration suite. And next one is with Gebrüder Heinemann. Maybe Gebrüder Heinemann, you know, they are a provider of the duty-free stores and at airports. And for them, it's very important when you check the price tags on the goods you can buy in their stores, that the prices are are updated in real time, so that they must be really in their current state. And in parallel, also the taxes which a passenger has to pay when he or she buys a good, they also depend on the target of the passenger, so the target city where the passenger flies to. And of course, all those components has to be considered when calculating the end price. So really having the real-time price, but then also the taxes. And for this real-time requirement, we set up an advanced event mesh instance and set up all the events, all the queues, and so on, such that this is really set up such that all the prices and taxes in the end are calculated very fast and in real time, such that the passengers get the correct payment information in the end and has to pay the correct price. And with that, I would basically already hand over to the Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask us. And apart from that, I would hand back more or less to Eric.
Sure. Thanks, Philip. So we'll move on to the Q&A portion. So it looks like we've got one question in the chat right now, but if anyone else has another question, feel free to ask it. So someone asked the question, SAP seems to reinvent the wheel when it comes to EDI integration in regular cycles, going from XI to PI, and then from PI to PO. And from there to Cloud Integration Suite. So moving to a new EDI environment is always a massive endeavor. So having something that's supported for the long term would be good to know. Is there any indication from SAP that this iteration will stay for the long term, or is it just another cycle until something else comes along? Christian, did you want to go ahead and answer that?
Yeah, maybe I can take that. So of course I'm not from SAP, so I can't give an official answer, but you also asked for an indication. I think the indication is there, and it's totally fair point that there were a couple of iterations in the past. Looking into the future, I would say there is an indication that the integration suite will stay for longer. SAP clearly communicated that it's the clear and strategic successor of PIPO, and also it changed a little bit, of course, their approach now being in a cloud-based infrastructure platform or integration platform as a service, allowing them as well to add features really easily. We see that currently with a lot of new topics, also in the AI areas, and also for a lot of topics supporting the actual migration. So my feeling is, from the partner perspective, there is a clear indication that it's definitely strategic. It's a strategic part of BTP. It also has been around for a couple of time already. So there's a lot of features already built in and not brand new. So it's not something they will, my feeling, start again right away. So for me, I would say clear indication that this is the strategic platform and that it should stay for a little longer.
Okay, perfect. And as for the poll, so I asked the question, what brings you to the webinar? A lot of you voted, about roughly 64% of you voted, and multiple choice was the option given. And most of you guys answered that PIPO was a goal for this year, as well as modernization with your architecture. Exploring automation was also a pretty popular answer. So thank you very much, everyone, for participating in the poll. If you do have any questions around those topics, we're more than capable of helping you out. We are part of SAP's migration network. So we're definitely a qualified partner to help you out in any migrations or any integration suite related questions. So from here, you can reach out to us via email or reach out to us on LinkedIn. Those QR codes lead to our LinkedIn pages. And if you would like to have a follow-up conversation about any of the topics you heard about today, then feel free to reach out. And with that, I guess we will close it. So thank you very much, everyone, again, for attending. Christian, Philip, thank you very much for spending some time and educating everyone. And thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.